Peace talks between the government of South Sudan and the opposition are due to resume in Addis Ababa on March the 20th. Africa 54's Ndimyake Mwakalyelye joins us now to tell about the role U.S. is playing to help both sides reach a peace agreement. Dimi.
Well, thank you, Vincent. South Sudan remains a volatile country following a fallout between President Salva Kiir and his former Vice President Riek Machar. Ongoing peace talks in Ethiopia to resolve the conflict have failed to end the fighting. Susan Page is the first ever ambassador to South Sudan. VOA's John Tanza, host of VOA's South Sudan in Focus radio program, recently asked Ambassador Page about the U.S. role in the peace talks.
With IGAD, who are the mediators for the process, they have so far secured a cessation of hostilities agreement between the parties, and they're putting in place, with significant funding from the U.S. government, the monitoring and verification mechanism, and then the teams that will be working underneath the mechanism to actually observe the cessation of hostilities agreement to make sure that it's being enforced.
How optimistic are you about the prospect for peaceful settlement of this current conflict in South Sudan?
It's not so much whether we're optimistic or not, but the fact is that there's no other solution. This is not a conflict that should nor can be won through the use of force and weapons. This has to be resolved through peaceful negotiations where people can understand each other and make a way forward to bring peace back to South Sudan.
Some people in South Sudan say foreign governments and international community are working very hard to remove the leadership in Juba. There was a huge demonstration in Juba and in Wau against a shipment of UN weapons that were intercepted in Rumbek. What is your take on these developments?
Clearly, the shipment of the weapons that were actually for the Ghanaian contingent working with UNMISS as one of the troop contributing countries, they did not follow the protocol that UNMISS has established, that any weapons for their troop contributing countries are meant to be shipped by air. However, this was an error. They have admitted their mistake, but it was not out of malice, nor was it to try to ship arms to any of the rebels, nor to the government for that matter. And the UNMISS is truly neutral, and we support UNMISS and its operations, trying desperately to help the people of South Sudan. So I do not believe that there is any government that is working to try to overthrow the government of Salva Kiir Mayardit, but attacks against the UN, whether it's UNMISS or the agencies of the UN and the funds like World Food Program, UNHCR, which is working with the refugees and the IDPs that have been displaced, they do not serve the government of South Sudan well. These are organizations that were put in place by the United Nations and by the Security Council, and an attack on UNMISS is really an attack on the entire UN system.
Your government has invested millions of dollars in aid and developmental projects in South Sudan. Recent media reports indicate that U.S. is considering ending its support for security sector reform in South Sudan. Is that true?
Yes, we are reevaluating, and right now our security sector reform programs are on hold. Given that the government itself has acknowledged that some 60 to 70% of the army that was of the SPLA has either defected to the rebels or has run from the army, it does not make a lot of sense to continue support for an army that is not yet whole. And while recruitment of a new national army goes on, even in the light of the cessation of hostilities agreement, which suggests that they should not be recruiting new members to the armed forces, neither side.
The talks going on in Addis between the government and rebels allied to Dr. Riek Machar have been on and off. And if the two sides cannot even respect the cessation of hostilities, is there any hope for a lasting peace?
This is one of the reasons why my government is supporting the MVM, the monitoring and verification mechanism. We've supported it with financial resources, with funding for staff, as well as for helicopters to be able to fly and observe whether one side or the other side or neither side is observing the cessation of hostilities. This is going to be an ongoing battle because right now both sides are still posturing for control on the ground, and fighting continues. Until that mechanism is up and running, I think we're going to be struggling with seeing the parties continuing to fight. And we just simply reiterate that there cannot be a solution militarily to this conflict, to something that is first and foremost political, and where the demands of the people do need to be heard. Right now, the talks are on a pause, and a civil society conference is going to be organized in Addis Ababa, and we're looking forward to that and having the mediators and the parties be able to hear from civil society some of the grievances that have led to this conflict.
Now, tomorrow on Africa 54, we'll bring you part 2 of John Tanza's interview with Susan Page, the U.S. ambassador to South Sudan, and she'll be telling us about how she urges South Sudanese citizens to demand the change that they fought for.